or are we on there?
Donna, so he couldn't make it.
Oh.
And Charlie's out as well.
Oh, I didn't know if there was a.
But Mary Stewart, sorry, we have a movie.
Oh, okay, good. That's her spot then.
All right, I'm going to call to order the April 23rd, 2026 Lexington Planning Commission meeting. And first item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. So anything that we need to make adjustments to? All right, then I'll take a motion in a second.
I move we approve the agenda as presented.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and the motion carries unanimously. Moving on to approval of the minutes. Anybody have any, excuse me, changes or concerns, anything?
Just one addition on the who attended, if you might add Krista's name under. But other than that, I look good.
All right, then I'll take a motion in a second with that amendment.
I move we approve the minutes as amended.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and opposed? And motion carries unanimously. All right, next item is citizens' comments on matters not on the agenda. Anybody? No, open and closed, just like that. New business. So we are doing the CPA 2025-01 Lexington Comprehensive Plan Draft Review. Arnie, do we have a staff report from?
A quick review before we bring the master up. Just to let you know where we are in the process, we've reviewed each of the chapters. We've made recommended changes. So has the Architecture Review Board. So has threshold for the housing chapter and ARB for the historic resources chapter. Those are now been put back together and brought to you. What we're trying to accomplish now is a final review of this final draft. And once we're comfortable with it, if it's this meeting or the next meeting, then we advertise it for a public hearing.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any public comment on the Lexington comprehensive plan draft? Okay. And I'm going to open and close that since there is none. And Jeremy, you'll come up, state your name.
Good evening.
Good evening, Jeremy Fruit, 316 Vine Street, Stanton, Virginia. Yeah, pleasure to be with you as always. I'll keep this relatively quick. Mostly just wanted to let you know that in addition to updated versions of all the previous elements that you all looked at, we also submitted drafts of essentially the intro and welcome section, the about the plan, the planning framework, and the implementation sections. Most of those are largely intact from how they'd previously been or how they were in the previous comp plan, just with minor tweaks to update some of the data and information, as well as updating the implementation tables to reflect the recommended changes to the goals and strategies that we have discussed as through our series of meetings. I did want to just highlight a couple of items that either have already been fixed or changed, even since we submitted the draft at the end of last week, and or things that I know still need to be tweaked before it is ready to go out for public hearing. One, the welcome section includes several infographics that highlight little elements of data, demographic information, education, the like. Those had not, at least some of those had not been fully updated by the time we got this out on Friday, and they have now. Just an example on page 2, there's an infographic citing that the percent of folks who have a bachelor's degree or higher. That number, at least in the current draft that you had, was still representative of the 2020 comp plan, but has since been updated to 57.3% instead. So all of those little infographics that are on the right side of those 3 pages have now been updated to reflect our new data. So that's one item. Secondly, I believe the folder that I sent that had all of the updated plan elements didn't actually include the economy chapter. It does now. And then secondarily, the the title page still states 2040, and that will be updated to 2045 to reflect the new planning horizon. So at least just wanted to bring those to your attention, as well as the table of contents and final page numbers. Well, that's always the last thing we do, just so you don't have to go back and re-revise it multiple times. But those will also need to be tweaked just to make sure that as each element flows perfectly in terms of the numbering from one to the next. So mostly just wanted to highlight all of those for you. But aside from that, I'm open to any thoughts or comments you have on any of those sections. And the one other item that I'll add to what Arnie said regarding the next steps is that we'll also need to get VDOT's approval of the transportation chapter. That's the one other element. So assuming based on the revisions that have been made to the transportation chapter, with your thumbs up and approval, we can go ahead and get that sent to VDOT to start their approval process, because they need to sign off and have a letter that's included with the adoption process as well. But I believe that's all the comments that I have at this time, and I'm very open to walk through the chapter. I know we have it pulled up here to be able to see if there is any pieces of it that you'd like to look at individually.
Okay.
Sorry, I do want to ask about
Oh, please.
the changing the date to 2045. So are they getting away from doing 5-year and then a big 20-year? Like, I'm just wondering, how do you keep track of when the 20-year is, or I mean, this was a pretty complete 5-year review. Is that what it's expected? And you don't really do a huge 20-year rewrite?
So I think maybe the best way to put it would just be that any comprehensive plan always has at least a 20-year planning horizon. And so even as we're updating this version of it, when it was first adopted back in 2020 with a 20-year planning horizon, it was till 2040. And now with each iterative update to it, whether or not that's sort of a complete rewrite or just a light update, it still has a 20-year planning horizon, because that's officially, according to state code, is what the plan is supposed to have. So I think that's what would be my reasoning for why to increase that I guess the planning date to 2045 instead of to 2040, just to maintain that 20-year horizon. I guess it could be 2046 at this point, if we would if you'd like to do that. But
I think, yeah, doing it on the fives is
Perfect.
is pretty well. But is it I have to now that I'm thinking about it, I assume it's documented somewhere within the plan that this was originated in 2020.
there is I'm forgetting which section, and it might be in the about the plan section. There is a little subsection that talks about the history and lists every time it has been updated.
Oh,
It
that's
includes a
right.
little blurb in there, like kind of talking about that.
Yeah.
So it certainly there is a section in there that does talk about the 2020 update.
Okay, great.
So as long as we're talking about dates,
Mhm.
so the next time just in terms of keeping track, so the next time this has to be reviewed is 5 years from now, not 5 years from last year.
From the adoption date. Yeah.
Okay, so I do wonder if we should just do 2046, so that
to
it's
y'all,
sort
yeah.
of like, okay, we know that we're on off years. It's not. Does that?
Yeah.
It is true that DHCD is not going to come knocking on our door in either case.
No.
Right.
State's not going to say, hey,
Right.
build it.
I just know, it's like a gift to you, right?
Right.
Either you want to, 4 years from now, if somebody says, hey, it's supposed to be.
I would be definitely counting from when this is done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. You want all the time. You can
Sure.
share.
Right, not a day sooner.
Well, more than happy to change it to 2046. I think we'll have to go back, and then the footer of every page has 2045 on
Yeah.
it. So we'll have to go back and tweak that, which is very easy. So there'll be one more change that'll be made to the current
Okay,
draft.
that would be great. All right, so 2046. Okay, well, thank you so much for all your work on this. First of all, it's really been quite a process, and we're grateful to you for all your clarity and patience with us.
Sure. It's been fun.
So does anybody have thoughts, any concerns about, do we want to go by, so I don't have a printout in front of me, so I don't,
No.
how would you like, what would be the best way for us to go through, unless anybody has any questions up front?
You have it pulled up, so we hopefully can pull it up on the screen so that to maximize the.
I had just a couple minor comments. I thought overall the plan looked great.
Yeah.
And I will say, I'm glad that we there's still sections to review because I've made it as far as the governance and haven't gotten through, so I'd like more
Right.
time to look at that in the appendix, but
So as we're talking about, that'll be where it will now reflect, 2046 instead of 2040. And then as soon as it's adopted, we can add the final adoption date there as well. The previous plan had the actual adoption resolution included as the first 2 pages. So we'll include that once that occurs. And then the previous plan had, a list of any amendments. We probably won't include that in this round because there won't be any amendments yet, but that's what that was for. There was the acknowledgements page. I tried to update it to reflect the current city council and planning commission staff, et cetera. And as well as, again, all of these dates will change to 2046. I'm very open to any additional acknowledgements that should be listed. Again, much of this is the same as before. In many cases, because of how, as you mentioned, how 2020 was sort of the big update, and a lot of the information from the 2020 update was still reflected. It seemed to make sense to me to still acknowledge many of the people who had still shaped the information represented in the plan, whether or not it was from this round or not, but I'm very open to making tweaks, changes, additions, et cetera. I believe I tried to update the names of some of those organizations to reflect, and hopefully
I have a question. When somebody has, like, one of the members of the Green Infrastructure Working Group has died, do you note that? Do you?
I think that would probably be up to y'all as to how you'd like to, because we certainly could put posthumously or something like that in parentheses if you'd prefer.
I don't actually know what, I mean, I'm sure he was involved. He died in last fall, I think it was. So anyway, this is Lee Merrill who passed on. So I don't know whether there's an appropriate way to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
I'd have to think about that one, but we certainly can adjust to reflect that however you'd like to.
Or maybe it's just better to just leave it, and if somebody's trying to track him down,
Yeah.
they'll learn very quickly
Mhm.
that they won't find him
Yeah, because
in this realm.
moved, and so I
Right.
think it said a couple other people have moved, but I think it's kind of nice just to leave the original
Great.
group.
Then again, like I said, the page numbers will be adjusted to reflect that, or to reflect the final page numbers. I believe this page has remained virtually unchanged from the previous plan, if I'm remembering correctly. But just provides an overview of all the major sections within the plan. And please stop me with any comments. I'll try to get through this relatively quickly. Again, I think this is just the welcome page. Again, I don't believe much of this has changed. These are the start of some of the infographics that, as I mentioned, have now been updated, including this is now, I believe it's 53% instead of 44.9. Same with these numbers have now been updated to reflect the most recent information. And it jumps into the about the plan section, which is kind of essentially tries to walk through what a comp plan is, what the legal basis for it is, pulling from the state code. Again, giving a little bit of additional context setting. And then trying to talk through how it ties in with all the other plans, how it informs the zoning and subdivision ordinances. This is where it talks through the previous comprehensive planning processes. Again, how it ties in with the other plans, including the city council strategic plan, the CIP, and among others. Gives a quick summary of the planning process that we used to update the plan, as well as a overview of the community input process, including the public input survey, the open houses that we did, our process here in this space, and then finally the public review, refinement, and adoption that will be upcoming. So gives a quick overarching summary of the information received from the public input survey. At least trying to hit some of the main highlights from there. Like
My, I
with
didn't
present-
realize my edits were coming up on. Yeah, I was gonna comment on that. I
No.
know somebody did point out on the map showing that the golf course could be used for housing, but it's not a former golf course. I just think that should be taken off because it's kind of misleading because it's not going to be developed for housing at any time
So just strike
in the
that
future. Yeah.
that
right.
phrase. Perfect.
Sorry, I was editing in the Dropbox. I didn't realize when that this was gonna.
Well, that's how I'm like,
Yeah, I
how
didn't.
did we get? Okay.
Right. That's funny.
Again, this is still providing a summary of each of those main bullet points of the community input process. And then the planning framework, again, this one has mostly remained unchanged, but talking through the overarching vision for the plan as a whole, again, has not changed since the previous planning process. The values that the plan tries to uphold and promote. And these again, then reflect within each of the goals tables that has those icons to
Right.
on the left side.
Yes, thank you.
Identifying which values that they are promoting.
Mhm.
The different planning elements. So this is the sort of summary of what we've been doing over the last several months of all the different planning elements that are represented within the plan, and talking through again just kind of the context setting of how to use the plan, talking about how each of those planning elements then has goals and objectives that hopefully will shape your decision making moving forward. And then this is the one pager that lists all of the goals and objectives under each of those value areas for all of them. And this there's only a couple of these that have actually been edited because most of our edits to the goals were more to the strategies underneath these, but there have been a few changes that were made. But that's the summary page that kind of provides an overview of all of the planning elements. And then we could jump from there into the actual element. So the only other new piece is the implementation chapter, which again just provides a little bit of context setting on on using the plan. As well as some of the tools that can be used to implement it, including the annual budget, CIP, land use regulations, et cetera. Your roadmap in terms of pursuing the goals and strategies, the catalyst projects that are included there, as well as your annual review process, or at least the recommendation to do so. And then after that, it jumps primarily into the actual implementation matrix, which provides tables regarding each of the now updated strategies for each planning element, which planning element they're represented in is relatively subtle, but this is historic resources strategy 1.1, et cetera, which lines up with the ID numbers that are listed within each individual element. But so the whole rest of the implementation chapter is just walking through all of those different updated strategies.
Great.
Yeah.
It looks really good.
Yeah, y'all had a great plan to start with. So most of what makes it looks good is all the work y'all did back in 2020.
And yet it has helped to have that,
Sure.
so I mean, the updates really make a difference. So
Absolutely.
I think credit where credit is due. Well done. So does anybody have any, Leslie, you
I
said,
do have a couple comments on
Yeah,
please.
page 26. And I guess it'll be highlighted on there. Which is the housing. It's a section on subsidized housing. And it used to talk about Mountain View Terrace as well, which is it's HUD housing, but it's subsidized, but it's not in there now. Though we do have the other 2 units that are tax credit housing, which is great. But if you could check that, it should
Yeah.
say something about Mountain View Terrace apartments, because that's an important part of our housing plan.
And sorry, where are the other two?
It's should be listed in that section. Yeah, it's right. That first paragraph talks about the last sentence says Lexington House on Windermere.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I can definitely go back and look at that and make sure that Mountain View Terrace is also represented. Mhm. I might be able to do a search through the comments in this document if that's helpful.
Sure.
Yeah, right. That's what I have on. And then on 101, and I can't remember what we decided we're on the strategies for, I was looking at land use 5.4. It says explore the creation of a new planned unit development zoning district focus on unique and flexible mixed residential development, which we've done that. We've completed it, but now we're working on just residential. So can we just strike mixed? Were we gonna take it out? I thought we were gonna take it out if we've completed it. Is that, I guess that's the first question.
Mm.
Okay, so,
Right.
so we can just take out mixed and
Yeah.
leave it residential.
So the only we're going to keep 5.4, but just change the language from a PUD to residential. Is that what?
Just
I'm
take
here.
out the word mixed
Okay.
from,
So flexible residential.
yeah, right.
Perfect.
Because our next PUD is just residential focused too.
Perfect. Awesome.
And then I had one minor comment on the transportation. I remember when we were talking about it, we were talking about the bike parking facilities, which is all great. I just thought it was a little overstated.
Nope.
But it said the city lacks sufficient bike parking facility, which discourage cycling as a viable transportation choice for every day. I mean, I guess you can leave that. I mean, the truth is we do have, we do need to put more parking in. We have a plan for it, but we also have a lot of parking that doesn't get used and it's actually well placed. So we don't need a ton of bike parking, but we do definitely need some strategic bike parking. I don't know that it really needs to be. I think I was more venting than.
Would it be, I can soften the lax language to something?
Lack sufficient, maybe just soften that a tad. But those were all I have. I haven't gotten through. Yeah, I didn't even realize the economy chapter was missing. I got down to governance and I stopped. Hadn't
Yeah,
gone
it is,
past
it's
there.
now there, so it's no longer missing. It is,
Okay.
it was, I think, when we first sent it.
So when are we going to be, when there's going to be a public hearing on this? Is that in 2 weeks or is that, do we have some more time?
It won't be in 2 weeks because I can't advertise until you all give the green light for it.
Okay.
So that we're waiting for that. And then we can advertise the public hearing. But to go along with that, also the question that I had was when we would do our public input session.
Yeah.
Is that the public
Yeah.
hearing or are we planning on doing something in addition for that third one?
I'm flexible with however much input you'd like. It certainly could be combined as a singular public hearing. It could definitely be a third public input session that has the completed plan that folks can provide input on.
If it is a separate one, then I think we want that, I presume, before we hold the public
Sure,
hearing. So then
absolutely.
that's going to push the public hearing perhaps a little bit.
yeah.
We want to get to a final and then ask for input before the public hearing.
I mean, I would say that we would want public input before the hearing so that,
Mhm.
so that we don't face a room full of people who are like, wait a minute, and then have to back up. I think
Sure.
it would be better. I mean, does that make sense to you all?
It does. The only other side of that is that we've had the two public meetings and the turnout's been very low.
Sure.
So I feel like people have had plenty of opportunity. I almost rather have the hearing and then have to postpone a vote on the plan if there is major outcry over something, then hold another meeting that nobody attends. I don't know.
So-
That's just me. Yeah.
So that could be, in your opinion, combined, then we held
Right, exactly.
hearing whenever we advertise for a public hearing shortly, the agenda item before that is this public input
Yeah,
session. We
right.
still have one to do, as
Mhm,
far as the
mhm.
contract
Okay.
goes.
I mean, that's just my thought. But if y'all want to have another public session, I'll come. Not sure. No.
So if we did that, when would we do that? I guess that would be,
Haven't thought about it. It's the absolute earliest that we could advertise, just for some context, would be the 28th of May because of advertising requirements and whatnot.
and that's for either.
Well, when I say advertise, I mean for a public hearing where we had to put the ad in more than 2 weeks in advance for 2 consecutive weeks and all that. Now, that's not the same as what we would have to do for whatever this public input session is going to be. It can be on the same date, mind you, but we're at least out to May 28th at a minimum. And if we hold something separate, and we're going to be pushing that public hearing even more. And for what it's worth, some people always complain, well, you hold stuff in the summer when people aren't here.
Right.
It's a refrain that we hear from time to time. So I just throw that out.
So well, I would probably still, advocate for having it beforehand. But I'm swayable as well. I just feel like, people would have, having the opportunity to talk, even though they haven't come out, yet.
Yeah.
You know? And who knows, maybe we'll get good publicity. I'm looking at you.
I don't know what a good strategy is to potentially have the public input on your first meeting in May, which is the 14th. But I'm not sure we're going to have a finalized version.
Yeah,
Certainly not by the end of today, it sounds like. So maybe that's a little bit too soon.
Jeremy, when
But-
could you have the finalized?
Let's see, I would like to think that getting that all repackaged up, and those final little tweaks made certainly by next Friday should be doable by the 1st. And then I guess would the planning commission need to sort of give like a formal thumbs up as a part of one of the meetings prior to that? That makes sense.
I think that's what we would prefer is you
Mhm,
all to
mhm.
say, hey, at this point, we're ready for it to be put out to the public for comment.
So that would be on the 14th would be sorry, I think I'm not quite following you.
I think that's what we're getting at.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
So have a meeting to discuss it on the 14th, same day as planning commission meeting?
Correct. Well, from what I think I'm hearing is we can bring the finalized version back. And you all also haven't, I think there may be a little bit additional review. So whatever comments you have at that meeting, if there are any, and then that'll be the final that we can then go forward with. That wouldn't need to come back because I think you had enough comment at that point. So if we're on the 14th and you give the thumbs up, when would you like that? I don't have enough time to schedule a public hearing, but we're still trying to work this public input session in before then. So would you like to perhaps schedule that for part of your May 28th meeting,
The public input.
public input session.
Um,
That is WNL graduation. I don't know that that matters, but I know John will
right.
be missing and
On that day.
mhm.
that might not be an ideal.
Yeah.
So June 11th. So May 14th would be the public input. Am I getting this right? And then June 11th.
That's your preference to hold that? Jeremy will get in the next week or so, the finalized. And I'm also a little bit worried that you all might want to have a few more comments from
Mhm.
your review. But those would be minor in my estimation.
Yeah.
So maybe we'll have something really close to the final ready for the 14th, and we can advertise that as this last public input session.
Mhm.
Does that sound workable?
I think
Just
so.
hold it here and figure out sort of how much that's different from the regular meeting. And if we show up a little bit earlier, like a half hour, and we
Yeah.
have boards or however we want to do that,
Sure.
That's a good way of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that idea.
then we'll do that on the 14th. And then after that, we'll advertise. And then it won't be the 28th, so it will be into June. So 11th will be your public hearing for this item.
Okay.
And that gives enough time for you all to finalize what you need to do for the last review, get the public input session,
Mhm.
and still be able to advertise.
I think it sounds good. It'll also give us time for VDOT to look and approve as well, I think.
I had a
Yeah.
question about that. So we don't hand it to VDOT once we're done with it. We hand it to them when planning commission gives the thumbs up, and then they go do their side sort of
Mhm.
review. And
Yeah, because I believe that technically we're supposed to have VDOT's letter of approval in hand when it goes before city council for adoption, is my understanding.
but again, there's nobody holding our hand to the rules necessarily.
More so than DHCD, but
Okay. So there has to be that review period, and I know
Which
that they
they're
have a
usually
certain
pretty
number of
quick.
days. They
they have
have
a certain
60 days or
it's-
whatever it
Yeah, I
is.
believe it's either 30 or 60, but they're usually pretty quick about turning those around. But
We're not adding new roads. We're not doing anything
Right.
complicated on the VDOT side, so I can't imagine that it'd be.
the primary change will actually be they will add the cost estimates for some of the transportation projects that we included in the
Okay.
plan. That'll be the primary, should be the primary change from what we have already reviewed and what's currently within the folder.
And if they have a problem with anything,
Mhm.
then it will come back to us. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So we're putting a pin in June 11th.
Mhm.
But we're not confirming that until we hear from VDOT.
That sounds good to me.
Okay. All right. All right. Is there anything else? Okay,
Could I have
thank you.
one-
Yeah.
Could I add one
Yeah,
item?
please.
I didn't even share this with Jeremy.
Yeah.
So I have one of these copies for you. But, because somebody came into the office, and this is an area behind Moyer River Middle School. Moyer River.
Yeah.
These in blue, so that Civic Campus Post future land use designation. I don't think we want those houses to be in that designation, because then it gives the owners of the school the idea that the houses could be subsumed, taken, and then added to their particular campus. I don't think we want that. I went back and looked at the old map from 2020. And it just had, it's that more of a bubble map,
Mhm.
so it just didn't show the houses, the line just kind of cut
Oh.
across it, so therefore. It wasn't obvious when we did this map. But when we put it to the parcel map, then all of a sudden those houses. So it's just
Yeah.
over here and it's just. We can tell what it's houses.
So you're proposing that we put this in suburban neighborhoods
Additional,
Oh,
that yellow
neighborhood.
color.
or traditional? Okay. Ah, yeah, I see.
Just to change the future land use map for those handful of residential parcels, because those are along Harpia Street are all single family
Yeah, makes sense.
types.
Yeah.
Just happened to notice that because somebody came in and had questions about one of the houses over there.
Good.
Yeah, good, good catch, I
Good.
think.
Great. Thank you. All right, Jeremy, thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. And next item on the agenda is the Plan Unit Development PUD zoning text amendment. Arnie, do we have a staff report?
Indeed. We provided a couple of things, the two vacant property, underutilized property maps from the two previous versions. That was a question I think that had come up. So those were provided to you in your packet. And then the other big change, and we're still sort of in this learning phase of what the last PUD included. And at the last go around on page 6, we have provided you with that table that just listed out the project names for each of those PUDs and the year, and then sort of the modifications that were requested in those PUDs. And again, these are for residential. This is the plan unit development zoning text that we had before until we changed it, and now we don't have it. So I'm trying to just show you what the language that we had that we went through at the last meeting and sort of what the projects were that were approved under that, just to give you an understanding of when we have flexibility in plan unit developments that can be uncomfortable sometimes, like, oh my gosh, where are we going to get? Who's going to be asking for what? How crazy is it going to be? And I think if you go through the list, for the most part, it's fairly straightforward. A lot of the times it's a lot size, reduction in setbacks, not having frontage on a public street. And then as I was reading through these last time, I realized it probably didn't really help you if you don't have the maps. So we ended up adding the maps that were approved. So if we go over to page 7, just as an example, Weatherburn PUD, out Thornhill Road, that included smaller lot sizes, reduced setbacks, and lots fronting on a private street. So the Chamberlain Loop Road, that is a private street, that is not a public street. So that would have violated the strict application of the zoning ordinance and the subdivision ordinance that says each lot has to be on a public street. And then also the lot sizes and the setbacks. So that's, I think, a fairly successful development and fairly well accepted. I'm just gonna go through these kind of quickly if that's all right, and please ask me any questions. On page 8, we have Thompson's Knoll. Also, modifications to lot size and front and rear setback requirements. We have smaller lots here in Thompson's Knoll. And that was a development that was taken on by Threshold and the city, but mainly by Threshold. And smaller lots, reduction in setbacks. And then going on, if there are no questions, going on to page 9. Board and Commons, this one I thought was a little bit odd because I didn't realize that there was a PUD for Board and Commons. And on the bottom of page 9, just to give you a little location map for the 3 that are in that immediate area. If you go up 60, turn in on Borden right at 60 West. We'll be talking about 60 West in a little bit, but Board and Commons is just around the corner, and this young PUD is right across the street from it. So Board and Commons was approved, whatever the date was that I didn't write on this page, for 5 units. So what they were trying to accomplish was to keep the back part of the property that actually faces on to 60 or Nelson, to keep that undeveloped. Not sure exactly why that was, but in order to accomplish that sort of clustering of houses, they had much narrower lots along Borden, and you count 5 there. Now, for some reason, this wasn't developed, and then something else was developed that created some other issues. But this was a PUD to basically do clustering to save a portion in the back. I don't know if it was environmental reasons. I don't think so. I think it was just to keep the houses from being seen along Nelson Street or 60.
Or maybe so that the people who lived in the houses didn't have to see
Or, yeah.
Route 60.
True.
In that, previously, the PUD did not have a minimum area, did it? It wasn't, I don't think it had any acreage restriction.
Well, yeah, because these are quite small. I
Right,
think,
that's
but
what
some
I'm
of them are, so I
yeah.
have to go back and take a look, but
I think
it
we
doesn't.
did that in 17, and
Yeah.
it wasn't like that before.
So wait, what was added? So, right, what was added? What was added in 17? So are we looking at the 2017 version?
We're looking at what existed prior to
to
2017.
2017.
So this is the old PUD. This is
Yeah.
the old PUD before we changed it into plan development mixed use. So completely different
Okay,
type of.
yeah.
But even in 17, we had a PUD that was different than the original. The pre-17 PUD, because the
I can't-
pre-17 was like nothing. I mean, it didn't have any, from my recollection, and I could be off, but it didn't have any minimum lot size, like not 2 acres or anything like that.
But
That's what,
that's what this
that's
is.
what is getting
Yeah,
to
right.
these projects. Yes.
And so in 2017, that's when we got rid of the PUD
No,
in favor of PDM.
no, we modified it
Modified.
to add more acreage and they added a lot more pieces to it. They tried to fill it out some more. The Berkeley group, when they put that together, added more heft to it,
To the PUD.
to the PUD. And then we took that and modified it just a couple of years ago to the
PDMU.
PDMU.
So
I need to provide you all with that interim
think,
one.
yeah,
because I
that would-
haven't done that yet.
that would be great.
So, yeah.
That would be very helpful. Because I do wonder, it seems like we've got two very different things that are being treated by the same article of the zoning text. So it's like we're looking at infill on the one hand, and then we're looking at these sort of larger scale developments, which is not at all infill. I mean, it is, but it's not like, putting an extra
Right.
house in your backyard.
Different scale for sure.
And
And
that's-
and I wonder if we need to have like two different sections of this that
And that's what the difference was with the 2017, is it got away from taking a single lot and turning that into infill and being able to, instead of going for variances, you built it into the PUD, where the 2017 set a minimum lot area of, I think we set 3 acres. And made it more aimed towards these developments, the Weatherburn, the Thompson's Knoll type thing.
right,
Yeah.
which makes sense. Yeah, I'm wondering about do we have the dates? We don't have dates on all of these.
If you look on
Yeah.
the chart or the table.
Oh, okay, not on there. Gotcha. Yep.
So again, this is that pre-2017, just to
Right.
give you a flavor of if we were to go back to that version that provided flexibility for residential uses at a smaller scale, not with the 3 acre minimum that I think we adjusted to 2 acres at some point for a
Yeah.
project.
Right.
So there were some adjustments to that middle PUD. But
Okay.
just to go back to the original one as a starting point, and that's what all of these were developed under.
Okay. Yeah. If I think it would be really helpful to see the interim.
We'll do that for the next meeting for sure.
Thank you.
So then, over on page 10. Lexington Commons, if you go out Thornhill, and this is actually right beside Weatherburn, but there's Lexington Avenue, and there were already a little stick of townhouses, and then at the end of the street, they wanted to put 5 more in or 6 more. So they needed a reduction in the rear yard setback to accomplish that. I take that townhouses were a by right use at that point in that zoning district because I did not see sort of a use variance for the type of units. It was just the setback reduction.
Is the unit, there's 2 sets of townhouses there. Is the one sort of,
It's not shown. It's if you come off of Thornhill, and so it's in the upper left portion of this.
Yeah,
The footprint's not shown on there, but they would be there.
actually, it
Oh,
does
on the
have a
second one,
footprint,
correct? Yeah,
and that was not part of this PUD?
that was already done.
That was already done. Okay.
I'm not sure how that was accomplished, but that was not done through the PUD process.
Got
It did not come up through the PUD sort of files that we
Are
have.
those the WNL housing?
One section is, and I'm not sure which is which. One of them seems to be condominium and owned by various folks, and I think one is maybe all WNL, but don't hold me to that. I'm not quite certain. And flipping over, if no more questions on that one, over on page 11. I think Mr. Doan was a former city manager, and he had a property off of South Main. And the colors are a bit odd here, but what they were trying to accomplish is there's already a house up front that you see Carolyn Morton, and Mr. Doan had a house in the back behind that, and he had a driveway going up the side. And then he decided that he'd like to split off that property. So there was an extra lot created through this PUD process, and that's the one that's outlined in red. That was never, I'm not sure if it was ever actually split off in the sense of, did it go through the subdivision process? It doesn't appear so from our GIS, and a house definitely wasn't built on it. But this was something that it created an extra lot that did not have street frontage, or certainly did not have adequate or minimum street frontage. I'll say it that way. So again, a way to unlock perhaps a rear yard or something that's not directly on a public street. Over on page 12. This is a property off of Houston Street. There was already a driveway that had 2 or maybe 3 dwellings on it. And there was this landlocked parcel. The parcel already existed. And it was asked through the PUD process to be developed. And that was the only way to, I presume, have a house put on that landlocked vacant parcel was through the PUD process. I will say that the fire department's not too pleased with this one because it's hard to turn into there and getting equipment or apparatus up there. So that just begs the question, when we have them review this,
Yeah.
they may have some minimum standards, and this asphalt driveway or whatever width it is may not be sufficient. So that's something to keep in mind when we go through the rest of the review. Then on the bottom of page 12, this was a parcel off of Overhill. As soon as you go across Woods Creek on the right-hand side, there was a house on a lot and a vacant lot. And along with the house, there was also a cabin and a garage. And this is all off of one private drive. They wanted to create a separate lot for that cabin and garage, and that's what the PUD was able to accomplish. And over on page 13, off of Enfield Road, they had a 5-acre parcel, and they wanted to subdivide a parcel off of that. Again, not having street frontage, that was accomplished through the PUD, and a house was built on that. Over on page 14, off of Donald Street, not labeled here, but at the bottom, you see the location map. When and I cannot remember the name of that subdivision, but when they created that, there was this lot left in the back. The developers wanted to put in 2 duplexes. The city convinced them that 1 duplex would be better. And that was accomplished through this PUD process so that they could have a lot that doesn't have the minimum 80 feet of width at the setback and less than 30 feet of frontage on a public street. So accomplished 2 things to be able to put that structure up against the bypass and behind one of the houses that fronts on Donald Street. Over on page 15, these folks wanted a house, a sizable house, an accessory building, and a little duplex. And they did not have enough frontage for all of that. It was accomplished through the PUD, and there is a deed restriction that this not be subdivided. That came up recently because the property was sold, and several folks that were interested in it asked about it. And I luckily was able to find the deed and told them, no, you cannot buy it and subdivide it off because the PUD approved it in this fashion. And it specifically required them to have a deed restriction that says you cannot subdivide this in the future. So that's another thing that could be brought forward with other approvals.
Right.
Over on the next page, this is actually a threshold project off of Cincinnati Lane. They constructed a duplex, but they, for some reason, wanted to make sure that it was on its own separate parcel. Each unit was on its own separate parcel. So we have a 0 lot line running down the middle, so no side yard setback there, and one property is not fronting on Cincinnati Lane. So that was again accomplished through the PUD. So setbacks, and also the fact that one does not have street frontage. So these are all getting towards flexibility to those
Right.
parcels that are more difficult potentially to unlock or develop, and this is how that can be accomplished. Page 17, 60 West is the PUD, I think, that started all this, in the sense that, if I remember the history correctly, that the folks who wanted to develop 60 West came in and got the PUD language adopted, and then came in for the PUD specifically for 60 West.
Mm.
So that all happened in 90 or 91. And in that case, you have duplexes on their own lots, zero lot line again. And you have open space there. You have streets that are less than what we would normally require. So again, that's sort of the flexibility that is allowed through the PUD process. And that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions, and we'll also provide you with that interim PUD before we went whole hog on PDMU for your next meeting. Happy to also provide whatever else to sort of continue this conversation that you might need.
So you're going to provide us also with some examples from other communities. I think that we had talked about Charlottesville and
Blacksburg, was that?
somewhere smaller though. There, I can't remember what the smaller community was. Anybody?
It's in the minutes.
Does anybody recall if I provided those links in the email for the when this packet went out?
Follow up the,
The links to those.
Thanks.
Okay, sorry. That was a mistake on my part because we were getting this packet out late. We have copies of the Charlottesville. And also, I was just going to link them to their websites. It was Charlottesville. It was Blacksburg, Stanton. Stanton had two actually, so I have to go back and see which one's more appropriate for what we're trying to accomplish here. There's also a request for Farmville, and reach out to them because they had on their website a 2023 PUD effort of some sort. And I called over and found out that they had that effort. It was not well received by some people in the public or council. So that didn't go forward. So we're not going to have an example from some place that's much closer to our size.
okay. Thank you for looking
But we
into
can
that.
definitely do those other three.
And are you, is it possible, I assume it is, to have, varying scales? That certain things are allowed on a certain, on properties that are of a certain acreage. And then once you get to a larger size, a different set of possibilities are options, become options.
What's quite typical in PUDs that I've seen is a minimum lot size because you want to have enough of whatever this thing is, enough of it to make sense.
Yeah.
Our earlier version of a PUD for all that flexibility, just for an extra unit here or turning a duplex sideways, that's fairly fine scale from what I've noticed before. Because most of them, you need at least 60 West, few of those town or duplexes to make sense instead of just having one. So in most cases, you do have that idea of a minimum lot size.
Okay.
But I would encourage that we still keep either no lot size, so we have the flexibility, but I think I understand the point, which is, do we have a two-tiered system? Perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. It would make sense to me to have a two-tiered system so that there's some level of understanding about what the options are if you are an owner and you have an extra large yard, that you're not going to put in 5 units on your back, on the back 40 or the back extra large yard, right? So I'll be interested to see what the interim PUD at 2017, right?
Yeah, that definitely had a 3 acre, and I'm pretty sure that we reduced it to 2 acre. I think for the Spotswood
You're
property, if I'm
right.
remembering correctly, because it was at 2.3. Oh, it was actually going to be bigger until Rah decided to buy it, and then it was only 2.3. So then we went down to 2. So yeah.
Was it even for Spotswood? I think it was for General's Retreat.
Okay. I'm
I
having
could be wrong, but I
Spotswood
think
on mine.
But
Okay.
I think it might have been General's Retreat, but you're right. We changed it to 2 for whatever,
Yeah.
for one of those
It
projects,
could have
just to
been
give.
for general retreat, and then
flexibility.
they decided not to use it.
'Cause it is, I mean, all these that are presented, I mean, none of them are too bad, except it's good that now that doing the site plan review, that the fire department would determine if you can't really access something properly.
Right.
But yeah, on some of the real small ones, I mean, it looks like they were just trying to avoid the zoning code,
Right.
and you can't get a variance for certain things. So they use this process, but then again, the end product generally wasn't too bad, and it did go through a public
Right.
hearing, so.
Glad you brought up the variance process because in the state of Virginia, it's almost impossible to grant a variance. So if you have a house and the setback and you wanted to build something a little bit closer or add an addition, the way the setback, the way the variance rules and regulations are written, and if you adhere to them, it's almost impossible. Because one of the criteria, it doesn't say hardship, but if the rule keeps you from having utilization of your property, then you should be able to allow a variance, but that's almost never the case. They already have a house there. They just want to build something closer, or so it's rare that there's something physically going on with the property where the stream is in such a location that you can't have enough front yard setback or rear yard setback. So it's almost impossible to grant a variance. And I think this was clearly utilized for getting around variances, if you will. But is that a bad thing?
Right.
I mean, if you look at the product, what here causes heartburn necessarily? And we are also on those properties that are just a little bit more odd, that aren't the square rectangular properties on a piece of a roadway that are easy to develop.
Right. I think we just want to, avoid having a situation where you are just trying to avoid adhering to the zoning ordinances for the sake of whatever, I mean, it's different, it's different if you have a triangular shaped lot and that becomes like, wow, how do I do this? I need some remedy.
That's why
So-
your criteria are going to be really
Right.
important to allow
Yeah.
the flexibility when it's appropriate, but also have enough criteria to say no when it's not.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll be interested to see all those, the Stanton, Charlottesville, Blacksburg, and our 2017 version, which was in place until when?
We did
I feel like that
a year or
happened
two
right
ago.
before I came on.
You weren't here for the PUMD?
PDMU
PDMU.
happened right before because I
Yeah.
remember everybody was still having trouble with the
Yeah, I still do.
with the acronym.
Okay, yeah. Well,
So,
time
like, yeah,
flies,
4
but-
years ago.
Because we've done ADUs since then, we've done
Cottage house,
PDMU.
cottage, so we've done a number of things
Yeah.
since then.
I think it must have been 4 years ago, 22. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Well, that was really sort of staff report and public comment. I guess I'll open it up for public comment officially. Okay, and I'm going to close public comment. All righty. So other business, do we have sorry, was there anything else that anybody wanted to? No? Okay. Other business. Zoning and planning report.
Same thing.
Okay. City council report.
Yeah, the only item from our meeting last week was we did approve the zoning ordinance amendment for townhouses so that they don't have to front on a public street. There wasn't much comment about it. Yeah,
Okay,
and that's all I have.
thank you. All right, we're at the end. We need a motion and a second.
I move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
You all.
I did. I already signed it.
Have you signed?
I think I did.